I consider this disloyal, Victoria said, her tone like ice, staring at me from behind her enormous mahogany desk. After everything Harbor Point Communications has done for you. I sat across from her, clutching my purse so tightly my fingers ached, trying to keep them from trembling. The shock of being called into her office at 9 a.m. on a random Tuesday had faded, replaced by a sinking feeling deep in my gut. Victoria, She cut me off, tapping a printed email with one perfectly manicured nail. Don't even try. I have confirmation that you interviewed with North Bay Solutions last Thursday. You marked yourself out for a dental appointment. Let me introduce myself. My name is Addison Walker. I'm 31 years old, and until this very moment, I'd given 6 years of my life, my energy, creativity, and weekends to Harbor Point Communications, right here in Spokane, Washington. In those 6 years, I built a portfolio from nothing, brought in millions of dollars in revenue, and earned the trust and admiration of every major client we had. But none of that mattered now. Security will meet you at your desk. You may collect your personal belongings. Your access to the building has been revoked, effective immediately. Victoria's voice didn't even crack. She slid my company ID across the desk like it was trash. And just so you know, she added coldly, your email has already been disabled. The injustice burned in my chest. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand an explanation that made sense. But I didn't. Not after 3 years, 3 whole years, of being told there just wasn't room in the budget for a raise. Not after watching Victoria announce record profits in every quarterly meeting, driving up in a new luxury SUV while I kept pitching clients with outdated laptops and stale coffee. So instead, I stood, straightened my blazer, and said, I understand. Her expression twitched, just for a second, like she was disappointed I wasn't crying or begging. Instead, I extended my hand. I wish you and Harbor Point continued success, I said, voice steady despite the storm inside me. She blinked, shook it briefly, and just like that, the meeting was over. Security didn't know where to look while I packed my things. I kept it quick. Family photos, a few notebooks, the desk plant I'd nursed through 4 winters. Colleagues watched from their cubicles, whispering, their eyes filled with disbelief. I gave them a small smile. No tears, no shouting, just quiet dignity as I walked through the glass doors for the last time. Outside, the April sun hit my face, and with it came a strange sense of clarity. Victoria thought she was punishing me. She couldn't have been more wrong. As I placed my box in the trunk of my car, my phone buzzed. David Clean, North Bay Solutions. Can we move our final discussion to today at 2 p.m.? I smiled. Victoria had no idea what was coming. It's funny how 6 years of your life can fit inside one cardboard box. As I drove home, I kept glancing at it in the rearview mirror, like I was expecting it to burst open and spill my old identity across the freeway. That box held the physical remnants of my time at Harbor Point, but the real weight I carried wasn't in the trunk. It was in the quiet moments, late nights, missed holidays, wins that never got recognized, and losses I carried alone. I'd joined Harbor Point straight out of grad school, fresh off my marketing degree from Washington State University. I started with nothing, entry level, fetching coffee and organizing meeting notes. But I volunteered for every project, took the late nights, the difficult clients, the accounts nobody wanted. Within 2 years, I was managing mid-tier clients. By year 4, I'd taken over our biggest account, North Bay Solutions. They represented almost a third of our annual revenue. David Clean, their CEO, had specifically requested me after I saved a campaign that was going off the rails. You're the only one who seems to understand what we need before we even say it, he'd told me. From that moment on, North Bay wasn't just a client, they were my client. I helped grow their business, doubled their marketing budget, and became a trusted advisor, not just another agency contact. Victoria had been thrilled at the time. This is the kind of initiative we value, she'd said, but that value never showed up in my paycheck. I remember my first raise request clearly. I came in with spreadsheets, performance metrics, client retention numbers, increased revenue projections. I even had benchmarks from industry peers. It's just not in the budget this year, Victoria had said, delivering her favorite line with a practiced sigh. "But your contribution is noted." I bought it that year. We were in a shaky economy and I was still proving myself. The following year, after I brought in 3 major new clients and earned an industry award, same line. This time, with a sympathetic tilt of her head. "Next year will be better. We just need to tighten our belts a little longer." Meanwhile, she leased another floor in the building and upgraded her car. Still, I stayed, out of loyalty to my team, to the clients. But when she turned me down again 6 months ago, right after I negotiated a 40% increase in North Bay's contract, that was the final straw. "Your performance is exceptional," she said. "But we're investing in infrastructure this year. Maybe we can revisit this in the summer." That night, I finally updated my resume. It wasn't about revenge. It was about self-respect. I knew my worth and I was tired of begging to be recognized. I just didn't expect Victoria to find out before I had the chance to give my notice. Back home, I set the cardboard box on my kitchen counter and stared at it for a long time. The silence was loud. I wasn't on a break. I wasn't between meetings. I was unemployed. That word sat heavy in my chest. My whole adult identity had been built around this job. Then my phone rang. It was Olivia, my best friend and Harbor Point's unofficial therapist. She didn't even say hello. I just heard. "Thomas texted me. Are you okay?" Thomas worked in IT, also Olivia's boyfriend. News travels fast. "I'm processing," I said, sinking onto a stool. It happened so fast. "It's completely unfair," Olivia snapped. "Everyone knows you're the only reason North Bay stayed with Harbor Point. Victoria is just scared because you're better at the job than she ever was." I didn't want to agree out loud, but she wasn't wrong. Victoria used to be the star account exec. She loved the spotlight, the client praise. And I think it bothered her, watching me step into that role naturally and without trying to steal it from anyone. The worst part, I said, was how she did it, like I'd committed treason for wanting a future. "It's her loss," Olivia said firmly. "Honestly, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. You've been undervalued there for years." She was right. I hadn't stayed for the money or the recognition. I'd stayed for the relationships I built, the clients I cared about, the work I was proud of. But being marched out like a criminal, that stung. My phone buzzed again. A call from David Clean. "Olivia, I have to take this," I said. "It's North Bay." "Go," she said, "and call me right after." I took a deep breath and answered. "Addison," David said, skipping formalities. "I just heard what happened at Harbor Point. Are you available to come in today? I'd like to accelerate our conversation." My heart jumped. "Yes, I can be there at 2 p.m. "Excellent. And Addison?" "Yes? Don't worry about what happened this morning. Sometimes these things work out for the best." I looked at my reflection in the kitchen window, hair tousled, makeup smudged. But something had shifted. The woman staring back at me wasn't defeated. She was finally free. I showered, changed into my best navy suit, the one I always wore for big client pitches, and touched up my makeup with the kind of precision usually reserved for battle armor. There was a strange calmness in my chest. Not confidence exactly, but something sturdier than fear. Victoria thought firing me would break me. Maybe she actually did me a favor. North Bay Solutions was headquartered in a stunning glass building downtown, modern, open, and filled with light. Compared to Harbor Point's beige cubicles and flickering fluorescent lights, it felt like stepping into another world, one that valued innovation, collaboration, and maybe even people. As I rode the elevator to the 30th floor, I rehearsed what I'd say. I didn't want to sound bitter about what had happened that morning. Professionalism mattered, even when others had forgotten it. I had to explain my sudden availability without sounding like I'd been dumped by the industry. When the elevator doors opened, I was surprised to see David Clean himself standing in the lobby waiting for me. "Addison," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "I appreciate the flexibility," I replied, shaking his hand firmly. "It's been an unexpected morning." "Let's talk in my office." We passed through the bright, buzzing floor, employees working in open, collaborative pods, glass-walled conference rooms alive with color-coded sticky notes, and a noticeable absence of beige. A few people I recognized from North Bay's account team waved as we passed. I returned the greetings, trying to keep my nerves in check. David's office wasn't oversized or intimidating like Victoria's. It felt comfortable, a place for ideas and conversation, not power plays. We both took seats in the lounge area near the windows. "Coffee?" he offered. "Yes, please." Once we were both settled, he didn't waste any time. "I received a call from Victoria Sanders this morning," he said, sipping from his mug. "She informed me that you were no longer with Harbor Point and that she would now be personally overseeing the North Bay account, at least until a replacement is named." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak just yet. David looked at me closely. "What she doesn't know," he continued, "is that we were already evaluating our relationship with Harbor Point." That made me blink. "You were?" He nodded. "We've been happy with the campaign results. More than happy, actually. The last one exceeded projections by over 20%. But we've noticed issues creeping in. Delayed responses, inconsistent deliverables, especially when you weren't involved directly. Frankly, we've felt taken for granted." That hit me harder than I expected. 3 months ago, he went on, our board began reviewing other agency options. I asked them to hold off because of you. You've been the glue holding this partnership together. I swallowed, hard. "When you reached out about potential opportunities here," David said, "it felt like perfect timing. But I want to be clear. We never planned to poach you. We respect professional boundaries. We were prepared to wait until you made the move yourself." "I was going to give notice once I had something firm," I said quickly. 2 weeks properly." "I believe you. That's part of why we're here now." He reached over to his desk, opened a folder, and slid a document across to me. "This isn't an interview, Addison. It's a job offer, Director of Client Strategy. You'd be leading our internal marketing strategy team and managing all external agency partnerships, including whoever replaces Harbor Point, should we go that direction." I looked down at the offer, and then I looked again. The salary printed on the page was almost double what I'd been making at Harbor Point, more than I'd ever asked for in my now historic raise requests. "This is incredibly generous," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "It's what someone with your track record and skill set deserves," David replied. "This is market rate, Addison. You've been playing below your level for years." That offer letter sat on my kitchen table that evening, waiting for my signature. David had given me until the next morning to decide out of courtesy, though we both knew I was already saying yes. I just needed a moment to breathe, to fully absorb the shift. My phone buzzed with text after text from coworkers at Harbor Point. News had clearly spread. Some were shocked, others just angry on my behalf. A message from Thomas, our IT guy, popped up. "Victoria called an emergency all-hands meeting after you left, told everyone you were terminated for breach of loyalty, and that the company rewards commitment above all else." The irony was almost comedic. Another message followed, this time from Jessica, our ever-kind receptionist. "She's been locked in her office all afternoon making calls. Looks freaked. Rumor is she's trying to reassure North Bay." I didn't reply. There was no satisfaction in her panic, just a deeper sense of how broken the culture at Harbor Point had become. And then my phone rang again. "Unknown number." "Addison Walker?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes? This is Elaine Winters. I'm on the board at Harbor Point Communications." That caught me off guard. "I understand there was an incident today," she continued, her voice steady but firm. "I'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning to discuss it." Victoria had fired me without clearing it with the board, and now, with North Bay at risk of walking, they were scrambling. "I appreciate the outreach," I said calmly, "but I've already accepted another position." A pause. "May I ask where?" "I don't think it's appropriate to share that at this time." Another pause, longer. Addison, if this is about compensation, I assure you the board is prepared to revisit those conversations. We value your contribution. The words I'd begged to hear, 3 years too late. It's not just about compensation, I replied honestly. It's about how Harbor Point treats its people. Respect has to come before damage control. I understand, she said after a moment. Still, I'd appreciate the chance to speak face to face. Would you be willing to come in at 9 a.m. tomorrow? I considered it. Not to entertain a counteroffer, but for closure, for my own peace of mind. I can meet at 9, I said. But just to be clear, I've signed another contract. I'm not returning. Understood, Elaine said, though I wasn't sure she believed me. After I hung up, I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto my balcony. The city lights were starting to twinkle. The air was cool but fresh, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Tomorrow, I'd go back to Harbor Point one last time, not as an employee, but as someone finally in control of her own story. And after that, I was never looking back. Walking back into Harbor Point the next morning felt surreal. Jessica at the front desk blinked in surprise when she saw me. Addison, you're here for Ms. Winters? That's right, I said, signing in as a visitor. Another surreal moment. Jessica leaned in slightly, dropping her voice. Everyone's still talking about what happened. For what it's worth, you were the best of us. People are upset. I gave her a grateful smile. Thank you. The elevator ride to the executive floor gave me just enough time to steady my nerves. I dressed deliberately. Sharp navy suit, clean lines, hair pulled back. Professional, but not overly polished. I wasn't here to impress or grovel. I was here on my own terms. Elaine Winters was already waiting in one of the smaller conference rooms. She rose to greet me with a firm handshake and a polite, unreadable expression. Ms. Walker, thank you for agreeing to meet. Of course. She motioned for me to sit. On the table in front of her was a slim folder with my name on it. I've reviewed your personnel file, she said without preamble. 6 years of strong performance, positive client feedback, impressive growth in your account base, and, of note, 3 formal salary adjustment requests. All denied. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I was not aware of that pattern, she continued. Major compensation changes typically go through the board, but Victoria has been operating with a high degree of autonomy in personnel matters. There was no mistaking the disapproval in her tone. What I don't see in your file, Elaine said, is any formal documentation supporting your termination. No written warning, no policy violation, just a vague note citing disloyalty. I was told interviewing elsewhere, while on a half day, was a breach of trust. Elaine arched an eyebrow. We have no policy prohibiting employees from seeking other opportunities. In fact, we've advised managers to avoid that exact kind of overreach. That word, disloyal, was a choice, one that likely says more about management than it does about you. She folded her hands together and looked at me directly. Ms. Walker, I'll be frank. The board would like to offer you reinstatement with the adjusted compensation you requested during your last review, plus an additional 10%. We'd also like to offer you the title of Senior Account Director. It was the offer I'd been chasing for 3 years. Only now, it felt like a relic from another lifetime. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully, but as I mentioned on the phone, I've already accepted a new position. With North Bay Solutions? She asked, not accusing, just confirming. I'm not at liberty to disclose that. She studied me for a moment, then gave a short nod. Victoria is concerned that North Bay may reconsider their relationship with Harbor Point after your departure. So there it was. Not concern about me, not regret about how I was treated, just panic over a client they couldn't afford to lose. That would be a question for North Bay, I replied evenly. Elaine gave me a measured look, then asked, if you don't mind my asking, what could Harbor Point have done differently to retain you? It was a good question, one I hadn't been sure I'd get the chance to answer. Recognize my value before I had to go looking for it elsewhere, I said. Loyalty goes both ways. Harbor Point asked for total commitment while consistently signaling I wasn't worth investing in. That imbalance isn't sustainable, not for anyone. Elaine nodded slowly, like she was turning my words over in her mind. A fair assessment, she said at last, rising from her seat. Thank you for your candor, Ms. Walker. Whatever comes next for you, I wish you nothing but success. We shook hands, and just like that, I walked out of Harbor Point for the second and final time. Only this time, I wasn't walking out ashamed or uncertain. I was walking out in control. The following Monday, I arrived early at North Bay Solutions for my first day as Director of Client Strategy. My name was already printed on the office door. My laptop and desk setup were waiting. Even a small welcome basket, coffee, a notebook, a plant, sat on the table, courtesy of the HR team. At 9 a.m., David stopped by to walk me through introductions. Team, he said, leading me into a sleek, glass-walled conference room. This is Addison Walker. Some of you know her from our previous campaigns. She's now officially part of the North Bay family. 5 smiling faces turned toward me, my new team, marketing specialists, project managers, analysts, talented people who I'd now be leading. It felt right. After a quick meeting to set initial priorities, David pulled me aside. There's something we'd like your input on, he said, ushering me into a larger conference room where several members of North Bay's executive team were already seated. In light of recent changes, the CFO began, we're reevaluating our relationship with Harbor Point. Their contract is up for renewal next month. The CMO added, we've also received proposals from other agencies. Addison, you've seen Harbor Point's strengths and weaknesses firsthand. Your insight would be valuable. They were giving me a seat at the table, not just as a participant, but as a decision maker. I took a breath. I knew the power I held in that moment. I could have easily said, terminate them. And truthfully, it wouldn't have been unjustified. But revenge isn't always the smartest play, or the most satisfying. I think we should evaluate Harbor Point the same way we would any other potential partner, I said. On results, communication, consistency. Their recent work has been strong, but they'll need to demonstrate stability and alignment with our strategy. David nodded, fair and balanced. That's why you're here. 3 days later, exactly 1 week after Victoria fired me, the decision was made. David gave me the courtesy of reading the final email before it was sent. I'd recused myself from the vote to avoid the appearance of bias, but it was clear which way the board had leaned. Subject, marketing agency, transition notice. After careful review of our evolving brand strategy and digital priorities, North Bay Solutions has decided to transition our account to Meridian Creative, effective immediately. We appreciate our past partnership with Harbor Point Communications and request all campaign assets be transferred by end of day Friday. Addison Walker, our new Director of Client Strategy, will oversee the transition process. It was professional, clean, and final. I could almost hear Victoria's reaction from across the city. Not just losing me, but losing North Bay, their largest client. 30% of Harbor Point's annual revenue gone. And the person managing the transition? Me. That afternoon, I received a connection request on LinkedIn from Jessica. She followed it with a private message. The office is chaos. Emergency meetings all day. People are panicking. Victoria's locked herself in her office. 3 account managers have already updated their resumes. Karma works fast. I didn't reply right away. There was no need to gloat or stir the pot. That wasn't my story anymore. Later that evening, I accepted her request and sent a short message. Thank you for always being kind. Wishing you all the best. Taking the high road felt surprisingly good. My new job at North Bay was just beginning, and with it came 100 new challenges and opportunities. But for the first time in a long while, I was where I belonged. Not fighting for recognition, but building something new, with people who saw my worth from day one. The weeks that followed were a blur, in the best possible way. Every day at North Bay brought something new. Strategy meetings, onboarding sessions, client evaluations, team brainstorms. I'd gone from juggling one major account to overseeing our entire portfolio of external partnerships. It was demanding, but it finally felt like the work I was meant to do. I wasn't just executing plans anymore. I was helping shape them. My team, 5 whip-smart, driven professionals, fell into a rhythm quickly. I made a point to listen, not dictate. We set priorities, clarified expectations, and created a culture of open communication. I wasn't trying to become the anti-Victoria, but I knew exactly what kind of leader I didn't want to be. Respect, autonomy, fairness. That's what I had craved for years. Now I could finally give it to others. Meanwhile, the fallout at Harbor Point continued quietly in the background. I didn't go looking for updates, but every now and then they found me. Jessica messaged again about a week after the agency switch. Victoria's been replaced. Elaine's taking interim oversight of the accounts team. Half the senior staff is applying elsewhere. I felt nothing. No joy, no anger, just confirmation. Confirmation that I had made the right choice by walking away from a place that never knew how to value its people until it was too late. And that's the thing about loyalty. It doesn't mean blind devotion. It's a two-way street. I'd given Harbor Point 6 years of my life, many of them unpaid nights, weekends, and holidays. I'd believed that if I just kept working harder, they'd finally see me. But they never did. They only saw my value once I was gone, and by then, I'd already found it for myself. One day, I got a call from a former colleague, someone still trying to navigate the chaos at Harbor Point. "They're offering retention bonuses now," she said with a laugh, like suddenly they realized people might leave. I wished her luck, and I meant it, because not everyone has the luxury to walk away. Not everyone has a David Clean waiting with a job offer or a team ready to follow your lead, but everyone deserves to know their worth. And if sharing my story can help someone else make a bold move, take a leap, or even just dust off their resume, then it was all worth it. A year later, I found myself sitting on a panel at a marketing conference, speaking about leadership transitions and the importance of recognizing talent before it walks out the door. Someone in the audience asked, "What's the biggest lesson you've learned in your career so far?" I didn't even hesitate. "Don't stay somewhere that treats your loyalty like a discount," I said. "You don't owe any company your soul. The right people will see your value without needing to be convinced." After the session, a young woman approached me, nervous but determined. "I think I'm where you were," she said. "Not getting promoted, overworked, I've been scared to make a move." I smiled at her, recognizing that same fire I'd once tried to dim in myself. "Update your resume," I told her gently. "Even if you don't use it right away, just remind yourself that you can." Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It doesn't show up in a public takedown or a triumphant speech. Sometimes the best revenge is simply thriving. It's leading a new team, building new partnerships, sitting at decision-making tables you used to dream about, and no longer waiting for someone to give you permission to shine. Looking back, Victoria did give me something that day. Not punishment, not shame. She gave me the push I needed to move on. Because without that sudden exit, I might have stayed another year, or 2, or 5, still waiting, still hoping, still justifying less than treatment with excuses about timing and budgets. But she forced my hand, and in doing so, she handed me the pen. Now I was writing my own story. And in this version, I didn't beg to be valued. I expected it, and I got it, because I finally realized I was never asking for too much. I was just asking the wrong people,